ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהים מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero as we start this morning with a fresh cup of coffee. And also looking forward to tonight that begins Shavuot, Friday and Saturday. It's a long, you might say, holiday, but one which will be enjoyed as we return to receive the Torah and study all night, and then in the morning wake up to receive the Torah. Now we are going to continue to study the Sefer Haikkarim, and in this chapter 16 of book 3, we're going to take a look at some of the words of Rabbi Albo that puts us in a position to question the eternity of the Mosaic law. Some have thought to prove the eternity of Mosaic law from the expression which are used in connection with some of the commandments, such as statute, forever, throughout your generations, it's a sign forever, and thus in connection with the Day of Atonement and prohibition of the new fruit, we find it's a statute forever throughout your generations in all of your dwellings. In connections with the Sabbath, we read it's a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. In the commandments concerning Passover, we find for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. And so there are commandments besides in which we find the expression a statute forever and throughout your generations in all your dwellings. And this, however, is no proof, says Rabbi Albo, for the opponents may say this rather proves the other commandments will be abolished, which, by the way, is the very basis of the Christian argument against the Jews, since these alone are so qualified. Besides, we are expressly told in the treatise of Kiddushin, why do we find the expression in all your dwellings? In connection with the prohibition of fat and blood. Answer, if the expressions were not there, we might argue that since the prohibition is found in connection with sacrifices, it holds only at the time when sacrifices are offered, but not when there are no more sacrifices. In the same place, the expression explains why the expression a statute forever occurs in the commandments concerning the Day of Atonement, in the prohibitions of new fruit, and not in other commandments. It appears that from their answer that if the expressions were not there, one might suppose that the commandments in question might become obsolete even while the others are still in force. But the expression is in question do not denote the eternity of the law. For it is possible that when other commandments are abolished, these will be abolished also. Nor can evidence be found in the expression of eternity or olam. Unto eternity, zar olam. A statute for eternity, hukot olam. Or to eternity, le'olam, for these expressions are their likes and are also applied to the limited and not infinite time. Thus we read, remove not the ancient zolam, landmarks which thy fathers have set. The word zolam, eternity, is used here to denote a time limited dating from the fathers. Other passages like for of old time, me'olam, I have broken thy yoke. Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto the Lord, as in the days of old, olam. And the plural, ze'olamim, also is used to denote the finite time. As I will dwell in thy tent forever, zolamim. O Israel, that thou art saved by the Lord with an everlasting zolamim. And that refers to salvation. This refers to the salvation from Sennacherib. Similarly, an expression that has been already in the ages, le'ezolamim, which is before us. The word denotes here a long time, or the word lezolam, also applied to a finite short time, as, and he shall serve him forever, lezolam, which means until the year of Jubilee. The expression Zad Zolam has a similar use. Thus Hannah said, I will bring him that he may appear before the Lord and there abide forever. Zad Zolam. The expression here means 50 years, which is a term of a Levite. As we find from the age of 50 years, they shall return from my service of work and shall serve no more. The expression Zad Zolam also is applied to the finite short time not known to man but to God alone. And thus Isaiah says, for the palace shall be broken, the city with its stores shall be deserted, and the mounds and the tower shall be for dens forever. Zolam Zad. And the latter says, until the Spirit is poured upon us from on high. Similarly, the expression all the days of eternity, Olam Kol Yamim, is applied to a finite short time, says Rabbi Yabo. Isaiah says, and he bore them and carried them all days of old, Kol Yamim, or Zolam Kol Yamim. While in its sequel says, but they rebelled and grieved his Holy Spirit, and therefore he was turned to be their enemy. Himself fought against them. Interesting how it's even mentioned that the guy can turn and become the enemy, which would be a very interesting word because it refers to the adversary. In short, none of these expressions or those like them necessarily denotes eternity or infinite time, but each one must be explained from its context. The word netzach, which signifies perpetuity, is applied to a finite brief time. Thus, in reference to the dwelling of the divine glory on Mount Sinai, we read, the mountains which God has desired for his abode, yes, the Lord will dwell therein forever, lenetzach. But the divine glory did not dwell on Mount Sinai forever. When the tent of the meeting was built, the glory departed Mount Sinai and dwelt in the tent of meeting. And similarly, the expression a statute forever, hukat zolam, does not necessarily signify that the thing will last an infinite time. For in the commandment concerning the candelabrum, we find the expression a statute forever throughout your generation, and yet it has been interrupted from the time of the destruction of the second temple to this day. Similarly, the expression a statute forever is used in relations to the feast of Passover and Tabernacle or Sukkot, and yet a rabbi say in Vayikra Rabbah that all the festivals will be abolished except Purim and the Day of Atonement. And it would seem that their interpretation of the expression a statute forever, that we may not abolish them on our own account, but that is possibility of their being abolished by God's command. So what is it? We find also that in the time of Ezra they ceased counting the month of Nisan, though this is the method of counting prescribed in the Torah, as we read, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months, and it shall be the first month of the year to you, this being the first commandment given to Israel. Although Tishri is the beginning of the year, when we count the years of the world, as we read in the Feast of Ingathering, a turn of the years, and this is the Feast of Ingathering at the end of the year, and then we compute the sabbatical and the Jubilee year, yet the Torah commands us to count the month from Nisan. Whenever we count from them, because in the month of Israel, because in this month Israel came out of Egypt, and the nation first came into existence. The Torah itself computes all of its calculations from Nisan, and thus it came to pass in the second year, in the second month, on the 20th day of the month, in the third month, etc., in the 7th month of the first day of the month, and on the 10th day of the 7th month is the Day of Atonement. And according to the usage of the Torah, the months have no names, but must be called second, third, fourth, fifth, 6th, 7th, beginning with Nisan, in memory of the Exodus from Egypt. And this is the meaning of the verse, and it shall be the first month of the year to you. That is to say, when you count months, begin with Nisan. Thus, when you count the years, you must count from Tishri, as we said before. But when they returned from Babylon, they desired to commemorate the second deliverance, which they did in two ways. First, was that they discontinued the Hebrew script and adopted the Assyrian in memory of the redemption from Assyrian exile. And thus our rabbis say that in the Tosefta of the treatise of Sanhedrin, why is it called Ashurit? Because it came with them from Ashur. The rabbis say the Torah was given to Israel in these characters, and it was the reason why it was called Ashurit. It's because it is the most excellent of Mishorit, of writings, according to the sense of the Gemara in the beginning of the chapter of called Kitbeim. It seems that the characters we now use in which our books are written are not Hebrew. If so, we may say that the rabbi's difference of opinion consists merely in saying that since the tables of stones were written in these characters, the name Ashurit was not given to them because they came from Assyria. But he admits that the Hebrew character used by the people anciently were changed. But even if we grant that he does not agree that there was a change, it matters not, because the opinion that of a single person doesn't count as against the opinion of the majority, the wise men. Majority rules. Moreover, in the Sanhedrin chapter Kohen Gadol, the Amoraim explain the words of the wise men. The passage is as follows. Rav Hista says in the name of Mar Ukba, originally the Torah was given to Israel in Hebrew characters, in the Holy Tongue. When the exiles came back in the days of Ezra, they chose the Assyrian characters and the Holy Tongue, leaving the Hebrew characters to common people. The Kufians, who lived in the land before the exiles came, they used the Hebrew characters in the Aramaic language. The Amoraim therefore agree that the characters now in use are not Hebrew. Nachmanides also testified that when he was in the land, he found in Akko an ancient silver coin with the jar of man and the rod of Aaron engraved upon it, and with the characters all around, and he could not read it. When they showed it to the Kufians, who retained the ancient Hebrew characters, they read Shekel HaShekalim. These are the words that were adds as a note at the end of the commentary which he sent from the land, from which it is clear that the characters now in use are not Hebrew. As for the statement of the rabbis that Mem and the Samik maintained themselves on the table of stone by a miracle, in other words, the Mem and the Samik, it may be that this statement is made according to the opinions of the rabbis in the tables of stone which were written in Ashurit, or the square characters, or else they also held the opinions that the table of stones were written in the square characters, though the people at that time used Hebrew characters. Or it may be that they were not referring to the Mem or the Samik, which we now use. That in Hebrew characters in which the tables were written, the Mem and the Samik were closed letters, for there were other letters similar to the Mem and the Samik of the square characters now in use. For Rabbi Hizda himself, who said that the Mem in the Samik and the table maintained themselves by a miracle, holds that the characters were changed. It is possible that the expression they chose square characters referred not to the whole alphabet, but only to a part. They selected some of the square characters and left the rest. Thus the Mem and the Samik were retained in the closed form, and they were in the tables, though some of the square characters were adopted in the memory of the second deliverance. This is, however, not likely, says Rabbi Albo. At any rate, it is clear from all of that went before that they changed the whole or part of their writings into memory, the second deliverance. And they also did another thing in memory of the second deliverance, namely that they ceased counting the month of Nisan, as they had been accustomed to do in memory of Exodus from Egypt, and adopted another method of counting. And this is what the rabbis mean when they say the names of the month came with them from Assyria. So literally, the names of the month that we now have came from the Babylonian exile. That is to say, they counted the month by the name Tishri, Marsheshvan, Kislev, as they did in Assyria in memory of the second deliverance, not the second or third or fourth, as they did before. This is an expression of Nachmanides in his commentary on the section below. So it seems from this that they understood that the commandments given in the Pentateuch concerning the numbering of the months to be temporary, as long as deliverance lasted. But after they were exiled a second time, they were delivered again. And they were told by Jeremiah, they shall no more say, as the Lord liveth, that brought the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But as the Lord liveth, and brought us up and led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country. They thought it was proper to give up the first mode of counting, which was in memory of the Exodus from Egypt, and adopted a different one, beginning from Tishri, when they counted the years of the world. And they also retained the names of the month, which they brought from Assyria in memory of the second deliverance, for they understood the commandments in the Pentateuch to count the months from Nisan was temporary and not perpetual, though there is no mention of time. There is nothing, therefore, to prevent us from supposing from the divine law that maybe in the future permit some things which are forbidden now, like the fat or the blood or the slaughter of animals outside the temple. These things were originally forbidden when the Israelites left Egypt because they were addicted to the worship of evil spirits and ate the flesh with the blood and ate the fat of the blood, as we related as we read in relations to the killing of animals outside the temple. And they shall no more sacrifice their sacrifices unto the satyrs. Satyrs, by the way, are demons. After, when they go astray. And with this form of worship has been forgotten, and all the people shall worship God, and the reason of prohibition will cease, and maybe that God will again permit it. And some of our rabbis have said, in the name of some same opinion, that in Yilamedenu, they say, commenting on the biblical expression, the Lord looseth the prisoners, Matir Asurim, he permits the forbidden. Matir Isurim, in other words, he will allow what was forbidden. To sum up, I see no evidence nor any necessity from Maimonides' argument that the immutability and irrepealability of the law should be a fundamental principle of a divine law generally, or that the law of Moses in particular. This is also the opinion of my teacher Rabbi Hasdai, namely that it is not a principle or dogma of the law of Moses, but he says that it is the doctrine with which every professing the Mosaic law should believe. The reason he gives it is that if we examine all the parts of the Mosaic law, we find that they all embrace all of these normal qualities, all of these moral qualities and theoretical ideas, which are calculated to give perfection to the soul in some manner. The reason is similar that which we quoted above from Maimonides' guide will come back to subject of the inquirer from a different point of view, whether the Mosaic law is liable to change, as are other divine laws or not. This requires some preliminary considerations, and thus Rabbi Abba begins in his next chapter, chapter 17, looking into whether the law of Moses can change and be somehow reformed or a new law be given. And this is part of his argument, to be able to understand that it is not a dogma of the eternity of the Mosaic law. And this is what Rabbi Abba begins. But he says, in contrary to Maimonides' position, keep in mind, the majority of the rabbis still retained till this day that the Torah of Moses is eternal and unchangeable. Rabbi Abba brings about the question, really? Is this true? Will there not be any changes? And so we're going to look at this a little bit further in chapter 18. As the words of the prophets are true without doubt, nevertheless there's a difference in degree. And he begins to involve himself in this argument whether or not the law of Moses is unchangeable or not. Can it be reformed? Can it be subject to reformation or changes, or as they would say, a new law? So we're going to take a look at that a little bit further in chapter 17. So stay tuned and don't lose the thought on this, because it's very important. And be part of the ways of Israel as we go into this area of, can the law of the Torah change? So I want to wish you and all of yours a wonderful, wonderful Shavuot, Hag Sameach Shavuot. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with the Ways of Israel. Shalom.